All right, the hearing's back. Please be seated. Mr. Griffith, you may proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Agent Palomino, you flew up here from Houston?
Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, excuse me. And we're here for basically 2 weeks?
About.
Is that correct? And you went to the crime scene, and when you were at the crime scene, you spoke with Investigator Enfinger. Is that correct?
Introduced myself, but there was a sergeant there by the name of Coxwell.
Okay.
And he's the one that did that initial briefing with me.
So you talked to Sergeant Coxwell from the Escambia County Sheriff's Department.
Correct.
And then did you proceed to look for electronic devices?
Not specifically electronic devices, because at that time, like I said, I did not have the list in front of me of exactly what was issued to him by DHS. But I looked for anything that stood out as a government property by means of not searching, just essentially looking around.
Did you find anything?
Not really, not off the back.
And then I believe you went and spoke with Mr. McCord at his office.
Correct.
And after talking to Mr. McCord, you went to Mr. Smith's office.
Correct.
And then did you go back to the crime scene?
I went to the sheriff's office.
At the time, by the time you got to the sheriff's office, had any of the evidence been brought back to the sheriff's office yet by the crime scene technicians?
It had been.
And this was on August 1st, I believe.
Correct.
And did you go through that evidence?
I matched up what they had already logged in with the list of the property list for the government.
And did you find some government items on that property list?
I did.
And did you at that time check those items out of the evidence room?
No.
Did you eventually check those items out of the evidence room?
Eventually, either myself or Agent George Jacoby did.
Okay. And when were they checked out of the evidence?
When they were being set up to be shipped off or taken to Secret Service or Homeland Security Investigations or Office of Chief Security.
Okay. In addition to the federal government's issued electronic devices, when I take that's the telephone and the laptops, is that correct?
Correct.
There were also personal electronic devices.
Yes.
Apple devices, you took all of those devices and sent them to your people, is that correct?
Correct. The sheriff's office asked us for assistance.
And none of the Apple devices were able to be opened, is that my understanding?
Correct.
And did that consist of an iPad and an Apple cellular telephone?
Correct.
Now, there was also one government-issued laptop computer that was not opened, am I correct?
Correct.
And can you explain to me what that laptop was? Was it just a Dell laptop?
Correct. It was just a Dell laptop.
And it was issued through, I guess, Department of Homeland Security?
It was.
And aren't there generally procedures to be able to open government-issued laptops in case somebody either gets killed, run over by a bus, commits suicide, or has a heart attack? Isn't there a procedure by which you can get those laptops opened?
There is.
And why was it that that procedure failed in this case?
The different type of security walls that it had up, it just wasn't working with the system for them to gain access.
Well, when you set up security walls, and I don't know if you're a computer specialist or not, and whatever you do, but aren't you supposed to permit or have your supervisors or some other supervisory person be able to get into your laptop? when, in case of an emergency?
You are, but with that computer and along with other ones, it was determined that there was a setup error initially when they gave those computers out, so it wasn't set up properly, and that was the reason why they couldn't access it fully.
So we don't know what was on that computer, is essentially what you're telling me.
With other investigative techniques, we determined that that computer was seldomly used. So
That wasn't what I asked. What I asked was, we don't know what was on that computer.
we don't.
So that's a question mark. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you recover Mr. Smith's keys?
No.
Did you look for his keys?
No.
You weren't interested in any keys or anything that might be on his keychain?
His personal keys?
Yes, sir.
No.
How about his office keys? Was that all done on the swipe card?
I believe he had a cubicle and an office space, but it was open. The door was open. I don't know
So
if
he didn't need a key to get into his workplace?
to access the front doors of the
Yes,
building.
sir. I mean, is that all done by swipe cards?
His access badge, but he had that on his person.
That's that badge that Ms. Jensen showed you?
Correct. And when you talked about that list, and I went back to the sheriff's department,
Yes, sir.
I contacted Investigator Infinger while he was at the ME's office, and he confirmed that he still had that RSA token and his access badge on him.
Okay. And the cellular telephone, I think you said he had a BlackBerry that was a government-issued BlackBerry.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And then he had the iPhone.
His personal iPhone.
Were there any other phones?
Off the top of my head, I think there was an old phone that we recovered also, but I don't think it was being used.
And was what was the area code on those two devices? Do you know?
I don't know.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
You do, Director.
The computer that you all weren't able to get into, you started to say something about its use, and then Mr. Griffith stopped your answer. So what's your answer? Something about it, you said you couldn't get into it, but you were able to determine its usage or something?
Yeah, we talked to Mr. McCord about if he would utilize that computer and how often did he utilize it. And it was given to him for essentially a convenience if he needed to get on it. But talking to his coworkers and his supervisor, he just come into the office and utilize the computers there.
Okay. Thank you, those are all my questions.
All right, you can step down, sir. Thank you. Okay, call your next witness, please.
State calls George Jacoby.
Good afternoon. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give to be the true self you guide?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Will you state your full name, please?
My name is George Jacoby,
Will you spell your last name for us?
Jacobi.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed with the Department of Homeland Security's Federal Protective Service.
All right. And do you have the same duties as Kevin Palomino?
I do.
And how long have you been with FPS?
With the Federal Protective Service, about 15 years now.
And do you have prior law enforcement experience?
I do, probably a total of 27 years, 24 of which have been with the federal government.
So back in July of 2015, what region or district were you assigned?
So I'm in Region 4, and I'm assigned to the state of Florida. So my area of responsibility is the whole state of Florida.
And as an FPS agent, I mean, can you really be sent anywhere in the United States?
Absolutely, and have. Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you, or back then, Did you typically work on assignments by yourself or with another agent?
It varied, but generally speaking, we're always with someone else, and sometimes we pair up with the locals, you know. If possible, we'd like to have another agent with us, and most of the times, we're with another agent.
Kevin Palomino testified he came from Texas to work on Richard Smith's investigation.
Correct.
Was that common or uncommon for someone to come from another state?
It's common, it happens, you know, as far as our investigative side, we don't have a whole lot of numbers, so sometimes we're a little short, and when we're short, we pull from other areas,
Okay.
which is what, in this case, you know, happened.
Now, in July of 2015 specifically, were you assigned to investigate the death of Richard Smith?
I was.
And did you work kind of hand in hand with Kevin Palomino?
I did.
And as part of your duties, did you take custody of a number of electronics from the sheriff's office?
I did.
Do you remember how many items it was?
There was 24 items.
And was some of it personal property and some of it government property?
Correct, a mixture of both.
Okay. And why did you take personal property of Richard Smith?
We were gonna conduct a forensic analysis, so you know, might as well take it all together and have it done. It's just to expedite it, make things easier. And, you know, we're looking for the same, you know, same things.
Okay. And Agent Palomino testified that the items were examined by Secret Service in Jacksonville, DHS in DC.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, was there anything of the 24 items that you could not access?
There was a total of 3 items, so 2 Apple products, I believe it was an iPad and an iPhone, and a laptop computer.
Okay. And is it common or uncommon to not be able to access Apple products?
It happens, and unfortunately, you know, Apple's, you know, got a pretty good encryption, so it's not something that we have the ability to really hack into.
Okay. And then Agent Palomino already talked about the computer. Was anything, were the examinations able to determine if anything was hacked or compromised or anything of that nature?
There was nothing that was, you know, compromised. None of the systems were compromised. We did not discover anything that would lead us, you know, in the direction of something nefarious because of his position.
Okay. And that was my next question. Based on your investigation, did you find any reason to believe that Richard Smith's job at DHS caused his death?
There was none. There was nothing that we found throughout the investigation that would lead us to believe that he was killed because of his position or because of his work.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If you had determined that Richard Smith's employment was the reason for his death, what would have been the next step procedurally?
This would not be in state court. This would be a federal case. So at that point, you know, if we had any clue that there was a nexus or likelihood that this was a federal crime, this would be a federal case, and we would, you know, treat it accordingly.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Agent Jacoby, you
Good
recall
afternoon.
when we spoke earlier, a while ago? I took your deposition quite a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Yes, I do.
Okay. Back then, we talked about basically the same things Ms. Jensen's talked to you about today, correct?
Correct.
And one of the reasons you came up here from South Florida was to determine if you could find any of the government information, that is, the computers that had been compromised. Is that correct?
That's a part of it. That's not the purpose. We're there to, you know, recover government property and to conduct the investigation.
Well, tell me, other than taking the electronic devices and sending them to 3 different federal locations, what else did you do investigatively?
I believe there was 2 locations that we sent them to. The previous witness said there were 3. There was,
the
DHS up in headquarters and in Secret Service.
and there was,
We contacted, I think, HSI or ICE to see
Right.
if they could do something. I don't believe that it was actually sent over to them.
Okay. Now, what did you do investigatively other than confiscate or take or be given the electronic devices and send those to the two federal agencies?
So our role was really to assist Escambia County at that point with whatever they needed.
Okay, but what I'm asking you is what specifically did you do? Other than get the electronic devices and send them?
We did some stuff, we walked through the crime scene as well. We,
Okay.
you know,
Let me stop you there. When you walked through the crime scene, did you take anything into evidence?
we did not. That was all done by Escambia County. Like I said, we're there to assist them. They are the lead in this particular case.
I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just trying to find out what else you did.
Okay.
When you said you did investigative work. Did you interview any witnesses?
We did not.
Okay. Did you conduct any searches other than walking through the crime scene? And I believe that the two of you went over to Mr. Hartung's residence.
Correct. We participated in the execution of the search warrant.
Did you search anything individually? Or were you just there?
We were there part of the search team, if you will.
But,
Yeah, well, so listen, if we went into the house, we obviously looked, around. So if we did see something, but did I recover anything? Did I process anything? No, I did not.
did you tell any of the Escambia County Sheriff's deputies that were conducting the search, hey, you need to get that piece of evidence, or you missed that, anything like that?
No.
Okay? Is there anything else you did?
Not that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any further questions.
Did you interview coworkers of Richard's?
So we did that, we did speak with some of the other coworkers. This is more something I think Kevin, did. My partner at the time went and grabbed some video footage of the facility, show, security cameras, things like that. So those are some of the other investigative things that we did, but, and you're right, we did talk to some coworkers.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. You can step down.
Will do.
All right, state call your next witness.
Brandon Garrison.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give the truth, so help you God? Yes, sir. Thank you. Please be seated.
Good afternoon.
Good.
Will you state your full name, please?
Brandon Garrison,
Will you spell your last name for us?
Garrison.
And Mr. Garrison, where were you employed in July of 2015?
Walmart on Mobile Highway.
And what did you do for Walmart?
I was the asset protection associate.
And how long did you work for Walmart?
5 years.
Did you know an employee named John William Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did John do? Well, was John an employee at Walmart?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what did he do for Walmart?
He was a cart pusher.
Do you know of, did you interact with John?
Every once in a while, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you know of any physical or mental limitations he may have had?
I knew he had some mental disabilities.
And just describe him for us.
He was always outgoing, always smiling, always showing up to work. But I knew his mental state wasn't always up to par for
Okay.
everybody else.
Did he seem to have maybe social issues?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he friendly, polite?
Yes, ma'am. He was always friendly, always had a smile.
Did he mostly kind of keep to himself?
Most of the time, unless we talked to him or another employee talked to him.
Okay. What did he like talking about?
Usually just, how busy the store was, or especially during football season, Alabama football.
Okay.
That was his favorite.
Do you know how long John worked for Walmart?
I know it was at least 20-something years because of his gold badge that he had.
Because of his what?
His gold badge.
What's a gold badge?
With Walmart, they have different stages of badges that you get for how long you've been with the company.
Okay.
And with the gold was 20+ years.
Okay. And do you know if John was at the Mobile Highway store since it opened?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Did John have any problems with other employees at work that you know of?
No, ma'am.
Any problems with any customers?
No, ma'am.
And in your position at the time, would you have been made aware of any issues he may have had?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how John got to and from work every day, or whenever he worked?
I knew he always got a ride from somebody.
And do you know the shift that John normally worked,
Yes, ma'am. It was usually in the morning shifts,
which is
usually 7 to 4,
7?
7 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Does the Walmart on Mobile Highway have video cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
And did law enforcement request some video surveillance of the last day that John worked?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you provide the video to law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
No objection, Your Honor.
Judge, at this time, I'd move States 362 into evidence
So admitted.
and permission to publish.
May.
Can you read the date at the very top
July 27th, 2015,
and the day of the week?
Monday.
And does this appear to be John at the register in the lower right-hand corner?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that him stopped kind of to the right side?
Yes, ma'am. Right here to the right, in the plaid shirt.
Do you recognize the car that he's putting groceries in by any chance?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you would never see,
He would drop them off or
okay.
pick them up.
got you. Those are all my questions. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Griffith, any questions?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Please sit down. Can counsel approach for a second? State, call your next witness, please.
State calls Diva Holland.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the true self you got?
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Will you state your name, please?
Diva Holland,
And Ms. Holland, where are you employed?
Gastroenterology Associates.
Where is that located?
Our office is at Sacred Heart Hospital in the DePaul building.
And what is your office number?
Phone number 850-477-2597.
What do you do for Gastroenterology Associates?
Office manager.
How long have you worked there?
25 years in April.
Back in 2015, did your office keep up with patient appointments, missed appointments, rescheduling, things of that nature?
Yes, ma'am.
And if a patient had a scheduled appointment, did they get a reminder?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did that work?
The system we use called the patient 3 days prior to their appointment and reminded the patient they had an upcoming appointment. And then you have to either, respond, you're coming, you're not coming, nothing, or,
Okay. And if someone didn't show for their appointment, was there any sort of follow-up by your office?
Yes, the day after the appointment, we would call the patient to reschedule the appointment.
Now, back in July of 2015, did your office have a patient named John William Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that date of birth 11/10/1967?
Yes, ma'am.
Did John William Smith have an appointment scheduled with Gastroenterology Associates in July of 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the date and time of his appointment?
July the 29th, 2015 at 10:20 a.m.
And did your office do one of those reminders you talked about for Mr. Smith?
Yes, ma'am. The reminders went out the 26th of July, and they're usually in the evening, starting about 6 o'clock.
Okay. And do you know if that reminder was, responded to, or I don't know the terminology, but?
Yes, ma'am. When I come back in, they do the reminders the night prior. When I come in the next day, I print a list, and it tells me if the patient confirmed, denied, canceled, and on that particular appointment, that the message was accepted, and for it to get, for that to be listed on the list, somebody had to actually pick up the phone and confirm the appointment.
Did John Smith show for his appointment on July 29th, 2015 at 10:20 a.m.?
No, ma'am.
Did anyone call to explain why he didn't show up?
No, ma'am.
Did your office try to reschedule John Smith's appointment?
Yes, ma'am.
And when was that?
The following day, which would have been the 30th. We do those first thing in the morning.
Was the appointment ever rescheduled?
No, ma'am.
Was John William Smith a new patient?
No, ma'am.
How long had he been a patient with your office?
The first time he was seen was in 2003.
And do you remember what his listed address was?
I just know it was on Deerfield. I don't know the actual home address.
That's okay. Thank you, ma'am. Those are all my questions.
Thank you.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Please step down. All right, members of the jury, because the next witness would have taken over 2.5 hours, including a long video, we're not going to take that witness this afternoon, so you can get off early this evening. So we'll start with that witness tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So again, if you could be back here at 8:45, do not listen, view, research, or any other way get information regarding this case. And did Ms. Beal get the letter she needed yet? Do you have that? Do you have Ms. Beal's letter? Do you have her letter? You have it? He's going to give you a letter, ma'am. All right. And again, with our thanks and appreciation, you're excused for the evening. Please be seated. All right, anything to address before we adjourn for the day?
Not from the state.
Yes, sir.
All right, see y'all at 8:45 tomorrow. We're adjourned.